Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you kindly for stopping by. I'm always grateful. I hope the weekend was good. It's been rather cold and chilly here in Nairobi. If you haven't seen a very powerful Mindspeak session with the Central Bank Governor, Patrick Njoroge, please take a look. We've split it into two parts. One is his actual presentation and the second is the Q&A. And then on Friday, I did an interview with Richard Britton-Long, who is the founder of St. Paul's Property Trust. We had a Mindspeak with him last year, and he's waiting on permission from the CMA to launch his issue. I love this tagline: "You can be a landlord in the United Kingdom with just £1 million shillings," which is $10,000. Macro thoughts. Well, it was all about the US number on Friday. Bond traders wiped June Fed hike off the table on what was a job market stunner. US two-year yields dropped like a stone as jobs misses enough of a shot to delay the June rate hike, is what the consensus is saying. But I like this comment from the Central Bank Governor of the Bank of Canada. "We have had a pretty straight line in the US labor market for quite some time, so I suppose it is a higher surprise value. But it's not unusual to have that kind of variability in the data." I'd incline to that view, that actually this was an aberration. There were a lot of people on strike. Verizon, 35,000 plus employees, and a couple of other things. Germany's 10-year yields dropped below 0.1%, so you saw a very big reaction in the markets pretty quickly. And I'll come back to all of that in a moment. Home Thoughts. I've nearly finished The War of the End of the World by Mario Vargas Llosa. It's the study of last things, millennialism, eschatology in the Christian tradition, which inherits this eschatological direction from older Jewish traditions. The last things are death, judgment, heaven, and hell. Two quotes from the book, which is pretty remarkable. "It's easier to imagine the death of one person than those of 100 or 1,000. When multiplied, suffering becomes abstract. It's not easy to be moved by abstract things. And yet, my dear Estella, in the end one accepts the will of God, resigns oneself, and discovers that even with all its calvaries, life is full of beautiful things." I like this photograph of a spectacular sunset in Nairobi. Photos by Moha Big. And then the very sad news over the weekend of the demise of Muhammad Ali. Let me put up a few photographs. Ali Bomaye, if you've ever seen When We Were Kings, which somehow has been removed from YouTube, but it's a most powerful documentary about the man. And this is the view from Masada, probably the best shot of that memorable night fight that was in Kinshasa, Congo. One of my favorite quotes, of which there are so many: "Impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's not opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing." Muhammad Ali. The fight is won or lost far away from the witnesses, behind the lines, in the gym, and out there on the road, long before I dance under those lights. Live every day as if it were your last, because someday you're going to be right. David Remnick in the New Yorker. It's a very good portrait of Muhammad Ali, who died Friday in Phoenix at the age of 74, was the most fantastical American figure of his era. a self-invented character of such physical wit, political defiance, global fame, and sheer originality that no novelist you might name would dare conceive him. Born Cassius Clay in Jim Crow era Louisville, Kentucky, he was a skinny, quick-witted kid, the son of a sign painter and a house cleaner, who learned to box at the age of 12 to avenge the indignity of a stolen bicycle, a $60 red Schwinn that he could not bear to lose. Eventually, Ali became arguably the most famous person on the planet, known as a supreme athlete, an uncanny blend of power, improvisation, velocity, a master of rhyming prediction and derision, an exemplar and symbol of racial pride, a fighter, a draft resistor, an acolyte, a preacher, a separatist, an integrationist, a comedian, an actor, a dancer, a butterfly, a bee, a figure of immense courage. And let me put up another photograph of him exhorting in Lingala Ali Bomaye. Others may know pleasure, but pleasure is not happiness. It has no more importance than a shadow following a man. He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life. If my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, then I can achieve it. I really do believe in that. My mum used to as well. Inside of a ring or out ain't nothing wrong with going down. It's staying down that's wrong. Muhammad Ali was the greatest, period. President Obama said, Ali shook up the world and the world is better for it. We are all better for it. Political reflections. China risks erecting a great wall of self-isolation in Asia over its actions in the disputed South China Sea. That's the US Defense Secretary Ash Carter. We do not make trouble, but we have no fear of trouble, Sun told the Shangri-La Dialogue. China will not bear the consequences, nor will it allow any infringement on its sovereignty, its security interests, or stay indifferent to some countries creating chaos in the South China Sea. So clearly we've got a situation of maximum contestation here now. We will not recognize any ADIZ by China, that's the Taiwanese defense minister. So lots of moving parts, but essentially we've got the rising power trying to push forward, and we've got the existing power pushing back. Fallujah is their heart, said Haider, the driver of a Humvee, ushering Iraqi police commandos to the front. If they lose it, then Daesh is finished. The Sunnis haven't yet realized that they have lost power, said Claire, alluding to perceived grievances since the fall of Saddam, under whom the Sunni minority held power. They're like a rich boy who can't face poverty. Look at their fertile land. Why did they need to bring all that destruction? But I tell you, it's been one continuous battle for 1400 years. And then this quote came to me in August 2014. McRaven declared, we're in the golden age of special operations. Quote from Paul Virilio, the blinding Hiroshima flash literally photographed the shadow cast by beings and things, so that every surface immediately became war's recording surface, its film. And then Hillary Clinton threw a few punches. It was a shredding of Trump's, which he said consisted not even really ideas, just a series of bizarre rants, personal feuds, and lies. Let's move on to the currency markets. Obviously, there was a humongous move on Friday, but we haven't seen much follow through. 113.40 euro dollar. Dollar index 93.87, Japanese yen 107.01, Swissy 0.9763. The pound, which rallied sharply on Friday, is now sold off 145 ticks to 143.75. Aussie 0.7331, India rupee 66.771, South Korean won 1163.48, the Rial 352.77, Egyptian pound 8.8850, and South African rand 15.1789, looking to sell it again. Leave camp leads in Brexit battle as Major turns far on Boris. Campaigners to get Britain out of the European Union have moved into the lead, according to a YouGov poll that increases the pressure on Prime Minister David Cameron, with less than 3 weeks until the referendum. And some of the polls are even wider. And I concluded by saying, Mrs. Thatcher would never have taken this to a vote. That's the first point. Sterling dropped as much as 1.1% to 143.53 on Monday and was down against all 16 major peers. 1 month volatility surged to 21.34%, a level last seen in February 2009. So we've got to keep an eye on that, and I think essentially if the Leave folks are going to pull ahead, then sterling is still a sell, looking for a level below 140. Euro dollar 113.39. I'll put up a 1 month chart, big spike on Friday. Gold also rallied sharply. We got as low as 12.06 last week at some point. We're now at 12.40.45. Crude oil, US crude oil up sharply, just under 1%, trading $49.30. I think it's a big sell. The rig count actually increased on Friday in the US, meaning that more people are drilling now because of the price recovery. That's a big signal. Let's move on to Africa. Secretary General of the ruling party in the DRC has said a referendum on term limits, i.e. President Kabila running again, is an option. Put up a photograph of President Joseph Kabila. Another photograph I saw of supporters of DRC President Joseph Kabila celebrating his 45th birthday in the popular Kitemba neighborhood of Kinshasa. It doesn't look like there were many people there. Addressing the crowd at the birthday rally, Henry Mova, the Secretary General of the ruling PPRD party, accused Kabila's opponents of seeking to destabilize the country. He also raised the prospect of a referendum to allow the Congolese to have their say on presidential term limits. The Congolese people are sovereign and their will shall not be questioned, he said. If the people decide on a referendum, they will do it. The people of Congo Brazzaville did it. The people of Rwanda did it, he added. I'll get to the point because I incorporated it in my weekly piece, and I'll get to that in a moment. Global Witness is saying around the last 2 elections, the DRC lost the equivalent of twice its annual health and education spend in secretive deals. Jean-Pierre Bemba, the Congolese rebel leader, is only one of 2 war criminals convicted by the ICC. Going across the river to the Republic of Congo, I saw this in the New York Times. There is a climate of generalized psychosis. Political violence roils the Republic of Congo. Interesting piece in the FT about how Africans' well-being fails to match growth. Report by Legatum Institute ranks African countries according to both wealth and well-being, which it calls prosperity. It defines prosperity according to a combination of 89 variables spanning 8 categories, from entrepreneurship to health and education. Legatum finds almost no correlation between GDP levels in Africa and prosperity as it defines it. Although Angola has had Chinese-style double-digit growth for the past decade, it is ranked 33rd out of the 38 nations covered in terms of overall prosperity. Angola derives 94% of its foreign revenue from oil, scores poorly in education, governance, social capital, and personal freedom. The African continent has made no relative progress on prosperity, the report says, contrasting its performance with East Asia. Index ranks Rwanda 8th in prosperity, while Angola, which is 4 times the GDP per capita, comes in 25 places lower. So it's interesting. Sham democracies fueling Africa's terrorism. This is an article at CNN. So deadly that the Global Terrorism Index, which tracks terrorism trends across the world, noted that sub-Saharan Africa accounted for the highest number of deaths per attack than any other region of the world in 2014, nearly 3 times more than the Middle East and North Africa. This trend is likely to be repeated in the 2015 report. The reality is that in many sub-Saharan African states, where terror groups are present, democracy exists in name alone. Governments embellishing themselves with multi-party elections, liberal constitutions, and other facades of democratic governance preside over regimes which are political, socially, and economically exclusive. South African all-share is up smartly this year, being helped a little bit by the weak currency. S&P ratings reprieve for South Africa strengthens Gordhan's hand. South African Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan emerged in a stronger position in his tug-of-war with President Zuma after S&P Global Ratings decided not to cut the nation's credit rating to junk. This means that Gordhan will not be going anywhere for the time being unless he takes a personal decision to go. This is Susan Boyce, politics professor at the University of Witwatersrand. This is another signal that Zuma cannot survive without Gordhan, even though their relationship will continue to be very rocky. The rand gained more than 3% to 15.0931 against the dollar on June 3rd. I doubt it can hold that gain. Put up a 6-month chart of the rand, and I think we'll definitely have more manoeuvring and uncertainty. Nigerian president to visit London, doctor regarding ear infection. The president was examined by his personal physician and an ENT specialist in Abuja and was treated. Both Nigerian doctors recommended further evaluation purely as a precaution. Buhari's first year mixed results for Nigeria's Baba Go Slow. This is the Daily Maverick, Simon Allison. Having occupied Aso Rock, the president's residence, for a year now, has Buhari been able to make good on his promises? Has he delivered the change that Nigeria's citizens are so hungry for? His new nickname, Baba Go Slow, would suggest not. Buhari took nearly 6 months to appoint a cabinet. That's about 12.5% of his term spent ruling by executive decree. Not exactly the best formula to convince the one-time dictator's critics that he had really changed his ways, coupled with repeated delays to the release of the 2016 budget. Buhari has earned a reputation as a slow mover. Nigerian all shares down 3.52% this year. Ghana is mulling syndicated loans after abandoning Eurobond sale. Considering raising money through private bank loans, abandoning plans to sell as much as $1 billion of Eurobonds on concern its inability to raise targeted budget revenue may spark an investor sell-off. Essentially, the Eurobond market is shuttered when it comes to Ghana. Teens detained for defacing Burundi president. Police in Burundi opened fire and injured at least 2 people during a protest by school children against the arrest of fellow students for defacing a photo of President Pierre Nkurunziza. Residents and pupils said the children, 6 girls and 5 boys aged over 14, were placed in custody in Murubya Central Prison in mid-afternoon. Insulting the president carries a potential jail term of 5 to 10 years, according to Burundi's penal code. And I'll put up a photograph of what they actually did to President Nkurunziza's photograph And then a photograph of lazy Burundi afternoons by the lake from Padresh, tweets from Bujumbura. The Economist is a very hard-hitting article. Railways in Africa puffed out, although only a year remains before completion. Not only are tariffs and rates undecided, this is referencing Kenya, but it is not even clear who will run the railway. Kenyan officials have apparently taken to skipping trade conferences of late to avoid answering questions. Could this be because the new railway is a dud investment? Its fastest trains will do a fairly mediocre 80 kilometers an hour. Much as with the old railway, parts of the new line will be single track, forcing trains to stop, often for hours, to let others pass. Most absurdly, it is built to a lower standard of load bearing than most other new freight railways. Some fret it may not be possible to load four full containers onto each wagon, as is done on other new lines. They're getting a third-rate railway for the cost of a very expensive one, says a consultant. Repaying the loans taken out to build the line will require hefty fees or huge volumes of traffic, but truckers who now handle more than 95% of freight moved from Mombasa port will compete fiercely on price, and shipping companies may look for other ports if levies rise. Rehabilitating the older line might have cost just 5%, as much as building a new one on a new right-of-way, reckons Piero Pozzo di Borgo of the IFC, part of the World Bank, but efforts to mend rather than buy have generally not gone well either. It's a brutal article, rather alarming. Let me put up a photograph of the old Mombasa-Nairobi railway as you see it at Manyani Gate as you enter Savo, and then a railway crossing at Manyani Gate itself. Uhuru Raila State House meeting averted deadly Madaraka clashes. This is the Daily Nation. My weekend piece was called Street Protests Will Hurt, 6% growth forecast. 2 weeks ago I was in Doha and I was watching international satellite TV in my hotel room in Kenya was headline news. 3 fatalities were reported that day 2 weeks ago. The protests have expanded geographically and evidently the level of intensity was ratcheting higher. And then I thought to myself, presidential elections are not due for more than a year. I returned to Paul Virilio in his extraordinary book, Speed and Politics. The revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine, and itself becomes a motor, machine of attack. In other words, a producer of speed. Mohammed Fraser Rahim, the Africa Programs Officer at the U.S. Institute of Peace in Washington, was quoted by Bloomberg, the government has the situation contained, but at the same time, the protests have spread outside of Nairobi, he said by phone. If there is an increase in intensification of the protests for another 6 months, Kenya is going to face a very difficult situation. Quantifying the economic hit arising from the street turmoil is like shooting at a moving target. But surely that Monday, when I was in Doha, cost us at least $5 million. If this gets any bigger, forecasts of a 6% GDP expansion in 2016 and a top 5 position in sub-Saharan Africa will look like a Hail Mary pass. And this is the point: we keep allowing the political economy to use the real economy like a punching bag. I flicked the channels and came across a report from the Congo, where opposition presidential hopeful Moishi Katumbi had been leading the street against a third term for Kabila. Birthday boy President Joseph Kabila is constitutionally barred from running for a third term, and Katumbi has set out his stall now and is a formidable adversary. In fact, the numbers were building and Katumbi must have been thinking this might just turn into a tsunami. President Kabila, however, outwitted Katumbi by removing him from the street and the Congo entirely. might well prove a cleverly administered technical knockout. Of course, the precursor was the Burkina uprising in Ouagadougou in 2014, which terminated beautiful Blaise Compaoré. The street is a tinderbox, and it has become a major area of political contestation across the continent. Kenya police are ready to use lethal force against protesters. That's a report on the BBC. Kenya, have a look at the share price. They're currently conducting a rights issue. Have a look at the link, 10th May 2016, public notice on the disclosure of the terms of the rights issue. And take a look at an interview I did with Albert Mugo, the managing director, on the occasion of the release of the half-year results. EABL up 12.08% so far this year, and really got its motor on. Safaricom is up 3.98% year to date. Take a look at the interview I did with Bob Collymore on the occasion of his full year results. Barclays Kenya has slumped 27.57% so far this year. KK Security Group, which is a Kenya security company, is considering listing to fund expansion. The company, based in Nairobi, has annual revenue of more than 100 billion shillings, banking on increased business from the oil and gas industries in its existing markets in Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania. Oil and gas will be a large sector starting in 2 years on Windows Send. KK generates about 50% of its revenue in Kenya, where demand for security services has increased since Al-Shabaab attacked the upmarket Westgate shopping mall in Nairobi in September 2013. Kenya has nearly 4,000 private security companies with more than 400,000 employees, according to KK. Kenya shilling just above 101. Nairobi All Share down 1.52% so far this year. Nairobi NSE 20 down 5.93% so far this year. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful.